The second type of loop in Python is the for loop. Make sure to check out my video about the while loop. Hello everyone, welcome to TechScent, and let's continue with this Python tutorial. A for loop is used to iterate through a sequence, and a sequence in Python are like strings, lists, and tuples. A sequence is simply an ordered set. Let's say I had a string, so str1 equal to Python. And if I wanted to print its elements individually, I could use bracket notation. So print str1 index 0, that means the first element in my string. And then I could specify the other indexes like 1, 2, 3, and so on. But that's not a smart way to do it. Instead, I could use a for loop and iterate through this string. So let me show you how. So I'm going to use a for loop, so for element in str1 print element. Let's see what this code gives us. And you can see that we have each element by its own on his own line. So what this for loop meant is for each element in my str1 or my string, print this element. And this word over here can be whatever you want. You can put your name, you can put anything, but the most common one is I or G. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it for now as normal, so element, just to understand what I mean by it. Instead of a string, I could use a list. So let me use a for loop, and I'm gonna say for I this time in lst print, let's say print I. What do you think I would get? I'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, each one of them on its own line. Also, you could use a tuple. So I'm gonna say this time 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there's no need to mention parentheses because automatically Python will know that this is a tuple. So I got the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, each one of them on its own line. Let's say I want to know the sum of the numbers inside of this tuple. First, let me declare a variable called total and assign to it number 0. Then I'm gonna delete this print statement. What I'm gonna do next is, I'm gonna say total plus equal to I. That means if I is 1, it will add it with total. So total will become 1. Then I is 2, total which is 1 plus 2 is 3, then I is 3, so total also is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, I is 4, total is 6, 6 plus 4 will give us 10. So we should get 10 if I print my variable called total. Yup, we got 10. Let's say I wanted to multiply each element in this list by 2. First, I'm gonna declare another list called lst2, it's gonna be a empty list. And inside of this list, I'm gonna store the doubles of the numbers in the list above. So I'm gonna print a before and after. Right now, let me use a for loop. So for I in lst, I could use the append function to add an element inside of a list. So I'm gonna say lst2.append. What I'm gonna append is I multiplied by 2. That means if I is 10, 10 multiplied by 2 is 20. That means I'm appending 20 to my lst2, that means I'm adding 20 to this list, and so on for the other numbers. Let me print the before and after, so print lst, print lst2. So I should get right now a before and after. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. In the first iteration, I is equal to 10, lst2.append means add whatever comes inside the parentheses, so 10 multiplied by 2 is 20, I'm adding 20 inside lst2. Then I will become 20, so lst.append 20 multiplied by 2 is 40, so I'm appending 40 to this lst, and so on for the other numbers. Let's say I want to create a list of the first 10 numbers, so they are 0 to 9, right? Okay, instead of writing them, I'm gonna use the range function. So I'm gonna write lst equal to range. So if I want from 0 to 9, I will say 0 till 10. That's because the last number here is excluded. That means I'm saying here 10 minus 1, which is 9. But right now Python doesn't know that I want it in a list. So if I print my list, which is not a list for now, I'll get this range 0 to 10. That's because Python doesn't know that I want it to be a list. To do that, I need to convert this range function to a list. So I'm going to use the list function. And this time I'm going to print my list. And it is a list that contains the first 10 numbers, which is 0 to 9. In this exercise, I'm gonna create two lists. First list named even, the second is odd. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna store in the even list the even numbers, and in the odd list the odd numbers, using this list above that I created earlier. Definitely first, we need to iterate through the list. So I'm gonna say for I in LST. We already know that. Next, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna specify an if statement. And we all know if we divide a number by 2 and its remainder of this division is equal to 0, that's an even number. I'll say if I, and I'm gonna use the modulus sign to find the remainder of the division. So if I divide by 2 has a remainder equal to 0, I'm gonna append or add I to my list that's called even. That will store the even numbers inside it. So I'm gonna write even dot append I. Else, that means if I divide by 2, its remainder is not 0, I'll store them in the odd list. So odd dot append I. So I'm gonna print even, the list, and print odd, the list of odd numbers. What do you think I will get? Well, let's see. So this is the list of even numbers. First, let me take off the 0, it's useless. So I'm gonna specify here 1, and let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Did you know that we can use this range function in a for loop? So let's say for I in range and from 1 to 10. What do you think will happen if I print I right now? What I will get is numbers. So the numbers from 1 to 9. Let's say I want to print the numbers from a descending order. That means from 10 to 1. How to do that? Well, it's easy actually. Let me delete those. I'm gonna say 10, 0, then I'm gonna mention a colon, and this last value that I'm gonna mention right now is the increment or decrement value. In my case, it should be the decrement value. So what this means is, first it will print I, which is 10, then it will subtract 10 by 1, it will become 9, so it will print 9, then 9 will be subtracted by 1, and it will print 8, because 9 minus 1 is 8. And remember that 0 is excluded. That means we'll only get the numbers from 10 to 1. Okay, let me show you. As you can see, we got 10 all the way to 1, 0 is excluded. Do you remember at the beginning of this video, I used this method to iterate through this string and access its individual elements? Well, this time I'm gonna use the range function. So I'm gonna say range len str1. That means find the length of my string. And instead of printing I, I'm gonna print str1 index I. This len function finds the length of my string. It is 6 in my case. That means I'm telling for I in range 6. That means from 0 to 5. So when I say print str1 index I, that means first I will be 0. So I'm saying print str1 index 0, which is the first element in my string, which is p. So it will print p. Then I will become 1. Then that means I'm saying print str1 index 1, which is this y over here. And then at the end, I will become 5 because 6 is excluded. So I will become 5, print str1 index 5, which is the last element over here, which is n. So I'm gonna run my program. I got p, y, thon, each one of them on its own line. Next, we have nested for loops. So I have this matrix or list inside of a list, and I want to access its elements by its own. That means I want the console to print 1, 2, 3, and 4. To do that, I'm gonna use a nested for loop. For I in matrix. Let me print I to see what will show us. So run my program. I got a list. That's because the first element is a list by itself. The second element is also a list by itself. So that's why I'm gonna use another for loop to access each list by its own. So I'm gonna say for G in, what do you think I will say right now? I'll say for G in I. First, I access the elements of this matrix, and the elements of this matrix is a list. So I will be first a list. That's why I need to use G to iterate through a list, which is I. So I'm gonna print right now G. And G, I will get 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, this is it on for loops in Python. I hope you enjoyed. Okay, this is TechSent, and see you in the next one.